Already got nothing else to do today. Let me close this thing first. Okay, yohimbine. Yeah, I'm sure you've never heard of this stuff, but yohimbine is an extract from the yohimbe tree. It's found in Africa. You can take the underbark, the cambium layer of the bark, and you can get it out of there as well. The tree's a member of the coffee family, as weird as that seems, and the extract is bitter and spicy, and often it's brewed similar to how you brew coffee. This is what it looks like. It's red. The active ingredient in yohimbine is an alpha-2 adrenergic antagonist that increases the neurotransmitter norepinephrine. Norepinephrine, of course, makes you feel good. Yohimbine has been used for centuries as strangely as a mild aphrodisiac and a sexual rejuvenator. So it was a natural substance that they used in Africa. Evidently it works. Yohimbine's sexual side effects seems to stem from the ability to increase penile blood flow, and of course it's the same thing that Viagra does and Levitra and Cialis. It has been used to treat erectile dysfunction, minor erectile dysfunction. It also strangely induces sexual arousal in women. It does increase your blood flow. The drug does increase blood pressure, and of course it does increase your heart rate. Male enhancement products include male performance, a substance called male performance, yohimbe power, manpower, and Aphrodine. It is also found in Sobi Energy. I was going through this lecture one time, and I had a student. She said that her husband brought home some of this stuff, and he kept saying, "Let's try this. Let's try this." It was Sobi Energy, is what it was. He had a bottle of this stuff in the refrigerator, and she couldn't figure out what was going on, why he was so adamant about them trying this stuff. Anyway, she went home and poured it down the sink. And he got mad at me because I gave her this information. He was trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do. Who knows, guys? You never know what guys are trying to do. Yohimbine serves as a local anesthetic. In larger doses, it may produce a mild euphoria and sometimes hallucinations. At toxic levels, it can produce paralysis of the respiratory system, and it can kill you. Okay. You've got this stuff out. I've seen it while I was walking around the trail. Fedra is a bush that grows in deserts all over the world, and it's out there. I've seen it. The drug that it produces is ephedrine. A lot of this stuff up in Montana, strangely enough. Not that that means anything. This drug is a mild to moderate stimulant that is used medicinally to treat asthma, narcolepsy, allergies, and low blood pressure. Ephedrine is also known as Marwith and Ma Huang. If you've ever heard of Ma Huang, it's the same stuff. It's been used medicinally in China for 5,000 years, so they know about it in China. Ephedrine was first synthesized in 1885 and for decades was the only effective treatment for asthma. And for that reason, of course, it has been very popular around the world as an asthma treatment. Ephedrine's effects are less severe than amphetamines, though a toxic level is more likely to lead to psychosis. So this isn't something you should play with. Ephedrine and pseudoephedrine are the active ingredients in many cold products. Strangely enough, only about 13% of the population responds to these types of medications, and for that reason, and they used to put it in everything. It used to be in everything. When they first came out with cold remedies, everything had ephedrine and pseudoephedrine in it. Can anybody guess why? Even if you didn't react to it, even if it didn't cure your cold, it still got you excited and made you feel like your cold was going away, as weird as that seems. So they were feeding you ephedrine. Usually they fed you ephedrine with caffeine, so that it gave you a little bit more energy. They also make up the molecule that is converted to make methamphetamines and methcathinone, and for that reason, of course, they have taken it off the shelves so that you have to get it from a pharmacist. In the old days, of course, it was all over the place. It was just all over the place. Now, it's not. This substance has been implicated in sports doping scandals. If you use enough of it, if you concentrate it, you can use it like amphetamines. The NFL has banned it, and it is illegal in the state of Ohio. The sale of cold remedies is now controlled, of course, to prevent the hoarding of enough of the substance to convert into the more destructive drugs. Once upon a time, if they came into your house and they found 50 boxes of cold remedy, they called it paraphernalia, and they would arrest you for hoarding paraphernalia. Here's a drug for you. Caffeine. Caffeine is the most popular stimulant in the world. It's the most popular mood-altering drug in the world. It's the most popular habit-forming drug in the world. 85% of the people in the United States consume substantial amounts of caffeine every day, including me. I just drank a can of Mountain Dew, 12-ounce can of Code Red, which gave me 54 milligrams of caffeine. Now, the weird thing about that is I'm not affected by caffeine, so I drank it for the sugar more than anything else. I think I did, because caffeine
Bruce,
doesn't.
back to your
Ephedrine?
Back a couple, let's put 2 decades back, I used to work in a graveyard shift in one of those hardware stores. And after a certain time, you see customers coming in, buy tons of acetones and all these chemicals that they would not normally buy.
No, of course not.
I guess these were probably before the labs were recognized as meth labs.
Yeah. So you tag them, and the cops would come.
I didn't even know what they were buying for.
Ow!
I just restock.
Okay, good for you.
But then, they're always gone, and then they were just
All the acetone's gone, huh?
not enough supplies.
Caffeine is naturally found in coffee, it's found in tea, it's found in chocolate. And that's one of the reasons why your significant other may have given you chocolate. My wife gives me chocolate for Valentine's Day. Well, I want her to because I like chocolate. It tastes good. Anyway, I don't give her chocolate because she's always trying to lose weight. Caffeine is put in many products to give us energy. It's put in soda pop, energy drinks, and over-the-counter energy supplements, including 5-hour energy, whatever that crap is. Does that work? Does anybody use that stuff? It's really bitter, isn't it? It doesn't work. Caffeine doesn't work on me anyway. Water is the most widely consumed beverage in the world. There's a shock for you. Tea is the second most widely consumed beverage. Of course, tea has lots and lots of caffeine in it. Tea has been consumed in China for the last 4,700 years. It has been ritualized in many cultures like Japan and China. So you need to be careful if you ever go to Japan and China. Don't start knocking tea, because it's actually that's kind of taboo in those two countries. They have ritualized ways of making their tea. The English discovered tea from the Portuguese traders, and the country became obsessed with tea, which is one of the reasons why they started the drug wars, the opium wars. To this day, 4 o'clock, of course, is tea time in England. If you've ever been to England, everything stops at 4 o'clock. They take like 15 to 30 minutes off to drink a spot of tea, as stupid as that is. To drink tea. They put milk in their tea, which is, yeah, it's weird. It's got to be the weirdest thing in the world. And they eat cookies. They eat biscuits, what they call biscuits. They're just so goofy. We had an emergency at when I was at Ramstein, we had an emergency one day, I had to run up and tell the, we had a British contingent there, and I had to go up and tell the British contingent. And of course, they locked the door. It was 4 o'clock, and they locked the door. They weren't supposed to leave until 5 or 6. So the door was locked, and here I'm pounding on the door and trying to give them the information that I needed to give them, and they wouldn't answer the door because they were drinking tea. Of course, I left and went down. We took care of the situation, but it was a British military guy that was injured, and we were supposed to tell them about it. They were supposed to take. Well, we couldn't. We treated him, but we couldn't do anything extensive, because it had to be approved by the military. So it took 30 minutes to get those guys downstairs. Coffee was first cultivated in Ethiopia in 650 BC, AD, and from there slowly spread into Europe, though along the way many cultures banned it as an intoxicant, as odd as that may seem. There's a religious group in the United States that won't let you eat, drink, or consume any caffeine. Does anybody know what that group is?
In the United States?
Yeah.
Mormon community.
Yeah, the Mormons, they won't let you use any intoxicants, and they consider caffeine an intoxicant. In the United States, each coffee drinker consumes an average of 20 pounds of coffee a year. 8 ounces of brewed coffee will deliver about 135 milligrams of caffeine, and that's a cup of coffee. That's a normal cup of coffee, not a Starbucks cup of 16 ounce. My God, how could you drink that stuff? Anyway, people do. My son does. He drinks a lot of coffee. 8 ounces of instant coffee will deliver about 95 milligrams of caffeine. 8 ounces of decaf coffee will deliver about 7 milligrams of caffeine. Archaeological evidence indicates that indigenous people in Central America brewed cocoa products as early as 2,600 years ago. So it ain't just the crazy Africans, it ain't just the crazy Europeans and Asians, it's also the indigenous peoples of the Americas. From the Mayans, this practice spread to the rest of Central and South America. Power brokers, especially the Aztecs and the Incas. It was also up in this area. They have found pottery that had coca on it in this area, over in New Mexico anyway. In some of the Anasazi ruins, they found coca in some of the ruins. So it was up all the way up to here, even though coca doesn't grow anywhere close to here. It's all way down in Central America. Coca was originally marketed in Europe as an aphrodisiac, as stupid as that sounds, but it soon became merely candy, of course, and this is the chocolate candy that everybody hands out on Valentine's Day. The reason they do that is because once upon a time it was considered an aphrodisiac. So hopefully it makes your honey want to give you a big kiss. That's what the hope is, or not. Coca has a small amount of caffeine, of course, but other ingredients in the substance act as stimulants as well. I tried to look this up. I tried to figure out what all of these active ingredients were, but the only one I could find was theobromine. So if you eat chocolate, and a lot of people like chocolate, especially women seem to like chocolate a lot. They consider themselves chocoholics. It makes you feel like you're in love. Part of that has to do with the caffeine, part of that has to do with the theobromine. It really all depends on, I don't know, how much milk chocolate there is. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, manufacturers of cola soft drinks replaced cocaine with caffeine as an energy booster. We're primarily talking about Coca-Cola, of course. Coca-Cola still actually has cocaine in it, but it's only used as a flavoring. It doesn't have any of the active ingredients of cocaine. That's why Coca-Cola doesn't taste anything like Pepsi or RC or any of the other colas that you drink, any of the fountain drinks. Coke doesn't taste anything like those because it actually still has the cocaine extract in it. Some of the caffeine comes from the cola nut from the African cola tree. But most of it today comes from caffeine removed from decaffeinated coffee. And of course, as we're going to find out, or not, maybe not, okay. Energy drinks began with the invention of Red Bull in 1987. So Red Bull was invented in 1987, the internet was invented in 1993, video games were invented a little bit after that, and now if you mix it all together, you've got kids staying up for 72 straight hours playing video games on the internet. So there you go. How do they stay up for such a long period of time? They drink energy drinks, or they drink Code Red, I guess is real popular. Mountain Dew has just come out with a gamer drink. I saw it the other day in Walmart. So if you want to play games all weekend long, I guess you drink this stuff. Red Bull delivers about 80 milligrams of caffeine in an 8.3 ounce can. Red Bull also contains taurine, ginseng, guarana, glucose, B-complex vitamins, minerals, and carbohydrates. It's got a lot of junk in it. You got a lot of stuff in it, and most of this stuff acts as a stimulant. 8 ounces of brewed coffee will deliver 135 milligrams of caffeine. 8.3 ounces of Red Bull will give you 80 milligrams of caffeine. So let's talk about some of the soft drinks. Sobe Caffeine, Adrenaline Rush also delivers 80 milligrams of caffeine in an 8.3 ounce can. Starbucks Double Shot delivers a whopping 105 milligrams of caffeine in just 6.5 ounces. So there you go. That's quite a shot of caffeine. 12 ounces of Mountain Dew, and they talk about Mountain Dew and its caffeine, the amount of caffeine in Mountain Dew all the time. It's got 54 milligrams of caffeine. So it's about a little more than a third of the caffeine of coffee, of a cup of coffee. There you go. There's my Code Red. I've never tasted Voltage. I can't figure out what it is. What's in it? Citrus flavor and something. Anyway, I've never tried that stuff. Most of Mountain Dew tastes pretty crappy. If you've ever tasted Mountain Dew Baja, it's got coconut, something in it. It tastes like coconut. Who wants to drink coconut? I don't know. Maybe somebody does. 12 ounces of Dr. Pepper delivers 41 milligrams of caffeine. 12 ounces of Pepsi Cola. They've got a new Pepsi Cola commercial out. It's really kind of exciting. The lady comes in and she starts trilling. You know, it's quite a commercial. 12 ounces of Pepsi delivers about 38 ounces of caffeine. Coca-Cola, the original, delivers about 35 milligrams of caffeine. We're not done. Rockstar, I saw somebody had a Rockstar the other day. Rockstar delivers 240 milligrams of caffeine in a 16-ounce can. So there you go. There's a buzz for you. If you ever drink Full Throttle, delivers about 200 milligrams of caffeine per 16-ounce can, and it comes in 3 delicious flavors: citrus, orange, and blue agave. I have no idea what that is. What's the difference between citrus and orange? I don't know. Monster, you see these things all over the place. 16 ounce of Monster delivers 160 milligrams of caffeine. We're not done yet. I've got one more. Yes. Kickstart. It's Mountain Dew Kickstart delivers about 90 milligrams of caffeine. If you're into limeade, fruit punch, black cherry, or orange citrus. Like oranges aren't citrus. I don't know. It's new phenomenon out there. If you go to the bars and order, you can order a vodka and Red Bull. It's called Birch. It has different nicknames all over the United States, I guess, but in Los Angeles, they call it Birch. So if you ever go to a bar in Los Angeles, you order a Birch, you're going to get Red Bull, 8.3 ounces of Red Bull and a shot of vodka. I know, who's stupid enough to do this? It is reputed that this mixture will slow the process of getting drunk and results in less of a hangover the next morning. The problem is, of course, that the Red Bull speeds the alcohol into your system, so you get drunk faster. and you don't realize how drunk you are. So these people are getting really, really snotted. And they become relatively non-functional. Well, what do you do with somebody that passes out at a bar? I've asked you this question. What do you do with somebody that passes out at your bar? Well, hopefully you already cut them off. No, you have to call the paramedics. I mean, you can't have somebody unconscious at your bar. If they die, you're liable. So you have to call the paramedics. And everybody loves that when the police and the fire department show up at your bar. Everybody loves that. Deaths due to overconsumption of Red Bull have led to banning of the drink in several countries. You can't find it in France, in Denmark, and in Canada. Strangely enough, you can't find Red Bull in Canada. Guarana is a national drink of Brazil. It comes from the guarana shrub, which produces beans that have about 2 times the caffeine as coffee beans. The Brazilian drink normally delivers about 30 milligrams of caffeine in a 12-ounce can. They tried to market this stuff in the United States. God, when was it? Probably 20 years ago, and it kind of dropped. It didn't take off. People didn't like it very much. Anyway, guarana. I had some. I used to drink this stuff. It has kind of a berry flavor. It's really odd stuff, odd tasting stuff. My daughter was living in Mesa, and I went out to visit her during spring break. I was teaching at Mississippi University for Women. I visited her, and we went up to the Grand Canyon. We walked the Grand Canyon, and while we were walking the Grand Canyon, we drank guarana, which she didn't like. She said it was too sweet. Anyway, but I drank it. I was okay. It got me 30 ounces of caffeine. Not that it kept me awake. Mate is the plant whose leaves are brewed like tea. Mate is the national drink of Argentina, so we've seen the national drink of Brazil. Now the national drink of Argentina is mate. It delivers between 35 and 130 milligrams of caffeine per 8-ounce serving. 3% of the world's caffeine comes from mate. Anytime Pope Francis is from Argentina, and anytime somebody from Argentina goes to see the Pope, they always take him a shot of mate. Not that that means anything, I don't know. Anyway, he's Argentinian, and he drinks mate. And they'll give him, normally it comes in an 8-ounce container. Comes in a relatively small container, but they always give him 16 ounces of mate. As much fun as that is. Caffeine is a very bitter chemical. It's an alkaloid. It's in a class of chemicals called xanthines. It is found in more than 60 plants around the world, so there's a lot of people with caffeine. The half-life of caffeine is 3 to 7 hours. So if you take a shot of is that coffee? Mm-hmm. Right. You're going to be good for 3 to 7 hours. Congratulations. I just had a can of Mountain Dew, 54 milligrams of caffeine in about 3 to 7 hours. If caffeine affected me, about 3 to 7 hours, I'd need another shot of something. Okay, but that's a lot of coffee. Oh, only up to there. Okay. There are a lot of people around the world that really consume a lot of caffeine. The Swedes consume about 425. They average about 425 milligrams of caffeine per day. If you've ever been in Sweden, they've got a cup of coffee in their hand almost all the time. They don't put anything in it. They don't put sugar in it. They don't put cream in it. It's coffee. It's espresso almost. The English average 445 milligrams of caffeine per day, and that's because they drink so much tea. They get their caffeine in tea. As Americans, we only consume on an average 211 milligrams of caffeine a day. So we're not number one. We're certainly not number one. That would be England. The Brits drink a lot more caffeine than we do. 17% of our caffeine comes from tea. 16% comes from soft drinks. And of course, the rest of it comes in coffee, about 60% in coffee. About half of all Americans drink 3.3 cups of coffee a day. And when we're talking about cups of coffee, we're only talking about 8 ounces. We're only talking about a third of this cup. So there you go. You're such a good girl. You don't drink 16 ounces of coffee. You don't get all 3 cups in one container. 20% of U.S. adults consume more than 350 milligrams of caffeine per day. These people are fairly wired. Either that or it doesn't affect them. My son he drinks a lot of coffee, but it doesn't affect him. It doesn't keep him awake. If he stops drinking coffee, he doesn't have headaches. However, I have a brother that, I told you the story, my brother drank a 16-ounce Mountain Dew. He was headed to Norfolk, Virginia from Muncie, Indiana. He was headed Anderson, Indiana, to Norfolk, Virginia. He ended up in Bangor, Maine. He blacked out. He drank that caffeine and he blacked out. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know what he was doing. He went north instead of east. This is how goofy he is. Anyway, and he discovered himself in Bangor, Maine, and he figured it had to do with the caffeine that he consumed. My mother was very sensitive to caffeine as well. She drank a cup of coffee, and she usually only took a sip. She liked coffee. She loved the taste of coffee. The problem was if she drank it, she would have physical reactions to it. And what happened with her, she had heart palpitations. So when she got old, and she lived to be 98, when she got old, she couldn't drink any coffee at all. She'd take a sip of coffee and she'd have like a heart attack. Well, she'd have heart palpitations. Of course, when you're 98 years old and your heart starts fluttering, it looks like a heart attack. Anyway, so what are we doing? 65% of the 450 different soft drinks produced in the United States contain caffeine. They have to put the caffeine in artificially, so 65% of those drinks have caffeine in them. 7-Up doesn't put any caffeine in their drinks. Most orange drinks don't have any caffeine in them. Some of them actually do. The more caffeine you put in a drink, the more sugar you have to put in it too, because remember, it's a bitter. Caffeine is bitter, so you have to put a lot more sugar. And that's one of the reasons why Coke has so much sugar in it, is because of the cocaine extract and the caffeine they put in it. Caffeine is used in several prescriptions and over-the-counter medications. It's used in bronchodilators and decongestants, of course. Diuretics, it makes you pee, which is okay. Analgesics, alertness aids, appetite suppressants, menstrual pain controllers. As a vasoconstrictor, it can work on migraine headaches because it's a vasoconstrictor. So there you go. So that's what is in most migraine pills is caffeine, so that your blood vessels will expand. See, the reason people have migraine headaches is because they have a constriction of their blood vessels in their brain. They're too small, and they're not getting enough. They're not getting enough blood, and they're not getting enough oxygen into their brain. It's not going to make you stupid or anything. But if we can make those blood vessels expand, then the migraine headache will go away. Caffeine works by inhibiting the effect of adenosine. Adenosine is a neuromodulator that depresses your mood. It induces sleep. It has anticonvulsant properties. It causes low blood pressure. It slows the heart rate. It dilates the blood vessels. And of course, that's what the caffeine takes the place of. Caffeine's effect is controlled by heredity, of course. And as I've said before, my dad used to drink buckets of coffee every day. It didn't affect him at all. To those sensitive to caffeine, 350 milligrams per day may cause anxiety, may cause insomnia, may cause gastric irritation. In other words, it may constipate you. High blood pressure, it raises your blood pressure, so it can cause high blood pressure. Makes you nervous, gives you a flushed face, as interesting as that is. One study where subjects were given 500 milligrams of caffeine showed a 32% elevation of the stress hormones for an extended period of time, and this is because of the excess caffeine. Caffeine is lethal at 10 grams. That's 100 cups of coffee or 185 cans of Mountain Dew. So try consuming that. You can commit suicide by drinking 100 cups of coffee or 185 cans of Mountain Dew. I don't know. You'd be peeing all the time. In susceptible people, too much caffeine can trigger nervousness, like my brother. Caffeine is one of the substances that people prone to panic attacks should avoid. So if you are one of those individuals that suffers from panic attacks, just try it. Just go off of caffeine and see if it works. It should work. It may work. It probably will work. Counselors should ask their clients about their caffeine consumption and sensitivity, and excess amounts might create artificial anxiety. We have a problem in the United States that we're like sheep, so we follow each other. One guy says, well, this is, when I was in the service, oh, your wife just left you. Here, we'll take you out and get you drunk. That's the way to forget. You know, and so we're like a bunch of sheep. We just do the same thing everybody else does. Well, you know, everybody's different. That's the problem. So if I'm not sensitive to caffeine, and I tell Chris, look, Chris, I know how to take care of this problem. We'll just go out and drink us 15 cups of coffee. Well, it's not going to hurt me, but it may make you nervous. It may make you agitated. You may get into all kinds of fist fights because of your anxiety. Your anxiety level goes up. So, you know, the biggest problem is we've got, everybody thinks that they should be the same as everybody else, and that's just not the way it works. You need to monitor yourself. You need to figure out if you're actually having the same reaction as somebody else. Somebody else may tell you, oh, you need to stay away from Tylenol. Tylenol will give you stomach problems. Well, it can give you stomach problems, but if you have a sensitive stomach, it'll give you stomach problems. But if you don't have sensitive stomach, take all the Tylenol you want. It actually blows your liver out. So one of the things as a counselor, you need to find out if this person is consuming, well, first of all, you're going to talk about drugs and alcohol. But the other thing that you need to talk about is caffeine. Caffeine can cause, it can cause excess amounts of anxiety. And all they need to do is cut back on their coffee consumption. You know, if they come in with a double latte or whatever, 16 ounces of coffee, then maybe that's their problem. You know, they're suddenly having these psychological problems that potentially could have something to do with caffeine. So what you really need to do is find out what they're consuming in excess. And sometimes that's the problem. All they need to do is cut back on their caffeine. Excess caffeine consumption can lower the fertility in women. I was watching a video the other day. It was talking about why men and women have problems conceiving, and one of the big things was caffeine. It can make your ovulation erratic. It can lower the window. Women can only get pregnant for a select amount of time when they ovulate. It can shrink that window to make it less likely that she will get pregnant. It can change a male's sperm count. One of the things we just discovered, actually we've known this for a while, but we've just proven it, is that male motility leads to fertility. So the more active your sperm are, the more likely that you're going to impregnate somebody, if that's what you're looking to do. One of the other things that we found out, of course we've known this for a long time, that marijuana it reduces your motility. Marijuana makes your ovulation more erratic. But caffeine does exactly the same thing. So that's one of the new discoveries. They also just came out with a study that said that, and this is the reason that they're saying that motility is so important now. One of the things they just discovered over the last month, or well, actually they've been doing the research for a couple of years, but over the last month what they've discovered, or they've actually published the journal article, women have strictures in their reproductive canal. They have gates, and So it's a thinning of the area. So when the sperm are swimming through the area to get to the ova, of course, only the fastest sperm can get through that gate. Only the fast ones can get through. The slow ones have to wait to get through the gate, this stricture that they talk about. So, and this is one of the ways that the best sperm is the one that makes it to the ova. It's the one that impregnates the ova. The best and strongest sperm. And that's, of course, what you want. You don't want a weak sperm impregnating, a woman getting impregnated by a weak sperm, and then all of the DNA. The DNA isn't as strong as it possibly could be. So this is one of the things that they've just discovered. So motility is really, really important. And this is one of the reasons why, well, we won't go into that has to do with female sperm and male sperm. Female sperm are smaller than male sperm. Females, but they swim faster. So if it's only right in the middle of the ovulation that a woman can get pregnant with a male child. But the odd thing is that, of course, most babies that are conceived are male. And that's because that's usually when she gets pregnant. Anyway, okay, so let's stop talking about getting pregnant. Research. Excessive 350 milligrams per day of caffeine will not only make it less likely that a woman will get pregnant, but it will double her chances of miscarriage. So when a woman is thinking that she may be pregnant or she wants to get pregnant, then staying away from caffeine is probably a pretty good idea. Excessive caffeine consumption has also been implicated in a woman's developing benign lumps in her breasts. These are benign lumps. This isn't cancer, but yeah, that's one of the possibilities of being female. Researchers also feel that caffeine may make it difficult to lose weight because caffeine triggers the release of insulin, which metabolizes sugar, and in turn creates a deficit in the blood, which causes the woman to feel hungry. And for that reason, she eats more. So the more caffeine you eat, and this is another way of losing weight, this is another method of losing weight, is to stay away from caffeine because you won't feel nearly as hungry if you stay away from caffeine. Since there's a number of different hereditary structures that dictate sensitivity and tolerance to caffeine, talking about amounts and effects varies from one individual to another. And you need to figure out what your level of tolerance is. Some people have a really high tolerance, like some of the males in my family. Some people have a really low tolerance, like my mother and my brother. High caffeine consumers may actually get sleepy when only consuming small amounts of the substance because it activates the adenosine receptor sites. And for that reason, caffeine actually makes them sleepy rather than the opposite. Withdrawal symptoms from caffeine begins after 12 to 24 hours of abstinence, and it peaks after 24 to 48 hours. I was teaching this class up at Fort Belknap, and I used to carry around cans of Mountain Dew, and they said, "Look at all that caffeine you're drinking. Can you get off that stuff?" And actually, that was the last caffeine I consumed for about 6 or 8 months. So I did. I went cold turkey. The weird thing was that I didn't have any after effects. So I didn't have any withdrawal symptoms from the caffeine. As strange as that is. And I was consuming probably 6 cans of Mountain Dew a day, which is, you can multiply that out, 54 times 6. That's like 324 grams or milligrams of caffeine. And I just stopped cold turkey, nothing. I didn't have any withdrawal symptoms. And I stayed off of it for about 6 to 8 months. And then I couldn't figure out why I was off of it. And they came out with Code Red, and it tastes so good. So I started drinking Code Red. I used to drink Diet Mountain Dew, just by the case. Symptoms can last from 2 days to a week. Throbbing headache is the worst part. You're sleepy, you are tired all the time because you were using the caffeine to keep you awake. You feel lethargic, you feel depressed, you have decreased alertness, of course, you're having sleep problems, you're irritable because you've got a throbbing headache. Flu-like symptoms, you may feel nauseous, you may vomit, you might have muscle pains or muscle stiffness from trying to get off of your caffeine. So there you go. If you have withdrawal symptoms, if you go off of caffeine, then you're sensitive to it. If you don't, then you're probably not. Nicotine comes from the leaves of the tobacco plant. The tobacco plant is a member of the nightshade family, which also includes tomatoes, belladonna, henbane, and petunias. Did you ever figure out what that plant was? Okay, we got to figure this out, because I know that stuff wasn't here until the 18th century. Okay. It wasn't, and it was over there. It was on the East Coast. In the United States, 90% of the tobacco is delivered to its users as cigarettes. In India, 85% of all the men use tobacco in the form of chewing tobacco, so they get to spit a lot. In India, we smoke cigarettes in the United States. Tobacco came to the old world from the Americas, and it was originally smoked in pipes. In the 18th century, people began chewing the leaves and snorting the powder into their noses as snuff. If you watch an old movie about the 17th and 18th centuries, especially in France, they used to put tobacco dust on their thumbs and snort it up into their nose, and then it made them sneeze. And they considered sneezing a form of orgasm, as confusing as that is, so they liked to sneeze. As stupid as that sounds. Okay. But who's going to say anything about the French, right? Smokeless tobacco continued to be the most popular use of tobacco until World War I. So the reality is that if you wandered around the West in the 1880s or the 1870s, most people weren't smoking cigars. They weren't smoking. Certainly weren't smoking cigarettes. If you see it in an old movie, I was watching a movie about Wild Bill Hickok the other day, and here he's rolling himself a cigarette. Well, that was in the 1870s. The probability that Wild Bill Hickok actually smoked cigarettes is fairly remote. He probably either chewed tobacco or he smoked cigars. That's the easiest way to consume tobacco. Smokeless tobacco continued to be the most popular use of tobacco until World War I. A lot of people chewed tobacco. And they spit a lot. Of course, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, spitting your tobacco juice doesn't mean a whole lot. But that was the most popular way of consuming your tobacco until World War I. Now, the problem in World War I was that soldiers weren't allowed to have a big chaw in the side of their mouths. They were able to chew or smoke a cigar, but cigars have a really big red end on them when you smoke them. So cigarettes became popular because you can smoke a cigarette in a couple minutes. It's a little bitty tiny red dot instead of a great big red dot. So you're less likely to be shot by a sniper. We were talking to somebody yesterday, and they were talking about, well, you were talking about,
Yeah.
about how, was it your cousin?
Yeah, because he came to visit, and he had an apartment that was like on a few-story terrace.
Right.
Every time we step out to talk or have a smoke, he was stuck down to the parts where it can't be seen. Even just taking a drag,
Yeah.
he would turn away from the window,
Right.
face the wall, and turn back around.
Because he'd been in Iraq, Afghanistan? Iraq. So he was had been conditioned to turn away from an open area when he smoked his cigarette. And of course, you can do that with a cigarette. You can cup it around your hand and smoke your cigarette, and nobody can see the light. Hopefully,
The movie I was seeing a couple nights ago, the Save Private Ryan one. One of the, I don't know which one it is, but he had a chewing tobacco. It was on the side of his mouth. And he just tossed it out.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he threw it out. I remember that as they were going into combat, he threw it out. Around World War I, packaged cigarettes became popular in the trenches of Europe. This was possible because cigarette rolling machines were improved. Cigarettes used a milder form of tobacco, which allowed deeper inhalation of the tobacco, so you could get more of the nicotine down into your lungs and into your system. Mass production produced lower prices. Advertising popularized the product. More aggressive marketing brought the product around the world. If you know anything about World War I, in 1914, the French poilus, the hairy ones, that's what poilu means, the hairy ones. They would smoke really short pipes so that they could keep it close to and they kept their hand on the bowl of the pipe. But if you look at the French army at that time, most of them smoked pipes. Well, by the end of the war, everybody was smoking cigarettes. And a lot of it had to do with all of these different reasons. Heavy smokers in the United States will smoke 20 to 40 cigarettes per day. That's 1 or 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Why they are packaged in 20s, I have no idea. I don't have any idea why they do that. They could package them in 25s. We used to get them in 5 cigarette packages in Vietnam with our K rations. U.S. Tobacco users spend $89 billion a year on tobacco products. 24.9% of the population over 12, that's about 60.5 million Americans, smoked cigarettes in the past month. So that's about 1 out of every 4 people. So we could count off. You can see which one of you smoke cigarettes. 51 million Americans smoke cigarettes every day. 13.6 million Americans smoke cigars every day. 2.2 million Americans smoke tobacco in pipes every day. 7.7 million Americans use smokeless tobacco every day. If you go up to Montana, everybody's got a can of snuff in their pocket. All the rodeo guys. I know, it's so silly. Half of them don't ever dip this stuff, but they always have and even if they don't, they have a ring around their pocket, their back pockets, usually their right pocket. I know, I don't know how, that's so stupid. Smokeless tobacco comes in 3 forms. Moist snuff that is put in the mouth next to the gums. They put fiberglass. They put fiberglass in the snuff. And the reason they put fiberglass in it is so it will cut your gums and it will get into your system faster. So they're actually using a substance that is non-consumable. Fiberglass is non-consumable. You can't really eat it, but of course it's cutting your gums and it's making you more addicted to the nicotine. Powdered or dry snuff, which is drawn up in the nose, and this is not as popular as it used to be, of course. Loose leaf chew is put in the mouth and chewed, and of course we don't really do that very much in the United States. Real popular in India, not very popular in the United States. The active ingredient in tobacco is nicotine. Nicotine is a highly poisonous alkaloid that is bitter, it's smelly, and it's colorless. The stuff, if you've ever seen anybody smoke and they blew on a tissue, a Kleenex, then it's yellow. It turns yellow, and that's the tar that you're seeing. It's not the nicotine. Nicotine is actually colorless, but it's the tar that is. That shit's going down in your lungs. Oh my God. When I used to teach this class up at Fort Belknap, there'd always be a smoker outside the room that I was teaching in, and I'd ask him to come in and blow on a tissue, and it always turned yellow, and everybody goes, ew, and of course it stinks too. That's tar. That's the tar from the cigarette. Tobacco leaves hold only 2 to 5% nicotine. Smokeless tobacco delivers nicotine to the brain in 5 to 8 seconds. Smokeless tobacco delivers nicotine to the brain in 3 to 8 minutes. Smoking tobacco 5 to 8 minutes. 5 to 8 seconds and 3 to 8 minutes for smokeless tobacco. Cigarettes contain 10 milligrams of nicotine, but a typical smoke will only get 1 to 3 milligrams in their system with 1 cigarette. And that's mainly because they don't really smoke the whole thing. Most of it is spent with them holding the cigarette. So they lose a lot of nicotine that way. They only get about 1 to 3 milligrams into their system with a cigarette. 70 milligrams of nicotine is fatal. So you can inject somebody with 70 milligrams of nicotine and kill them. And it's a good way to murder somebody if you can get that much tobacco. It's not that easy to get 70 milligrams of nicotine. You have to take, like, let's see, how many cigarettes is that? That's 2 packs of cigarettes and get all the nicotine out of all those 40 cigarettes. Chewing tobacco will deliver 4.5 milligrams of nicotine to the brain, while snuff will deliver 3.5 milligrams. The first cigarette of the day will raise the heart rate by 10 to 20 beats and the blood pressure by 5 to 10 units. Nicotine affects the central nervous system and disrupts the following neurotransmitter. It affects your endorphins, it increases your endorphins, it increases your epinephrine, it increases your norepinephrine, increases your dopamine, and it increases your acetylcholine. So it actually makes you more alert. And it also makes you feel good. All of those things make you feel good. Nicotine mimics acetylcholine, filling nicotinic acetylcholine receptor sites, exaggerating the cholinergic effects, increasing your heart rate, your blood pressure. It actually increases your memory. So if you smoke while you're studying, then potentially you'll remember more of what you're studying. Increases your learning, as strange as that may seem. It improves your reflexes, and this is one of the reasons why baseball players used to chew tobacco while they were playing baseball. Or they would smoke a cigarette in between innings because it improves your reflexes. It makes you more aggressive. It affects your sleep. It reduces the amount of sleep that you get. Okay, it's a vasoconstrictor. So the old cartoons used to show, if somebody had sex, the old cartoons used to show them smoking cigarettes afterwards. And the reason they were smoking cigarettes is so they would go back to what was normal before they had sex. Of course, in order to have sex, then your blood flow needs to increase. Well, the cigarette actually returns you back to normal. It's a vasoconstrictor, so it will take you back to a normal state. And that's the reason why people would smoke cigarettes after having sex, as in the movies or whatever. And it increases your mental acuity, as strange as that may seem. Dopamine makes a smoker feel satisfied and calm, while most of what the epinephrine and the norepinephrine, of course, make you feel excited. So it excites you and tranquilizes you at the same time. As confusing as that is. People continue to take in the tobacco toxins because it's a social ritual. If you know anybody that smokes, I know, it's so hard to stop. There's also a ritual aspect to the lighting up and the smoking. It doesn't make any sense to me. Smoking is perceived as an adult activity, so if you're a 9-year-old and you're smoking cigarettes, it means you're grown up, which is always exciting to be grown up at 9. It manipulates your mind by increasing the dopamine level. It appears to be rebellious, so people like to be rebellious. It is sexually attractive, I guess, or seen that way. If you ever watch an old movie, especially an old movie from the 30s or 40s, when a woman's trying to seduce a man, she'll smoke a cigarette and stand provocatively, and that seduces him somehow. No idea why. It smells like it doesn't smell good. It stinks. Ooh, I want to kiss that mouth. It tastes like an old ashtray. Somebody urinated in yesterday. It controls your appetite, leading to I had a girlfriend one time that was a smoker. It was horrible. I won't give you any more information other than that. Controls your appetite, leading to weight loss. Nicotine is craved because of whatever. Nicotine suppresses the appetite and increases your metabolism. The average smoker weighs 6 to 9 pounds lighter than their same size non-smoker. so it does suppress your appetite. There's a lot of reasons for that. One of the reasons is because it screws up your taste buds. Everything tastes like a cigarette, and of course, who wants to eat that stuff? Who wants to eat a piece of bread when it tastes like somebody just licked it with their nicotine-covered tongue? It may be the fear of putting on weight that keeps some smokers from stopping, especially women. Most of your models, the really slender ones, these individuals, most of them smoke. And they do it to keep the weight off, as strange as that may seem. Smokers may also be self-medicating to combat depression. Remember, it increases your dopamine level. If it increases your dopamine level, then you feel better. If you've ever been around a lot schizophrenics, they smoke all the time. And the reason they chain smoke is because they're trying to fill up they have excess dopamine receptor sites, and they're trying to fill those things up. So they smoke all the time. They chain smoke because every puff of the cigarette spikes their dopamine level, and it makes them feel more normal. Smokers are twice as likely as non-smokers to experience major depression. So the reality may be they're doing it to combat depression. Smokers who have experienced at least one major episode of depression are less likely to succeed in smoking cessation because it hurts too much. They get depressed when they stop smoking. As weird as that sounds. Nicotine creates an intense craving when a select level is not maintained in the bloodstream and the brain. The mere act of lighting up activates the nucleus accumbens, giving the smoker a sense of reward just by lighting up. And that's part of the ritual of either lighting the match or flipping the cigarette lighter. And sometimes these individuals can dissipate that feeling by just flipping their cigarette lighter, as weird as that sounds. So you'll see people just flipping their cigarette lighter, even though they're not lighting a cigarette. They still get a buzz out of doing that, as strange as that may seem. You get the same thing with people that use crystal meth. The meth pipe, I don't know if you understand how this is working, but you've got to keep that thing heated. So they have to flick that cigarette lighter a bunch of times in order to smoke the crystal meth. A lot of times they can just get the same kind of buzz from just flipping that cigarette lighter. And that's one of the reasons why they get such a horrible callus on their thumbs. It's not because they're smoking so much dope, it's because they're flipping their cigarette lighter all the time. And they'll go through a Bic lighter in a week. They're just keeping the thing going, as weird as that sounds. The rush is similar to the feeling that a heroin user gets when they relapse after an abstinent period. This used to escape withdrawal symptoms is called negative drug reinforcement, and of course they're trying to keep from having withdrawal symptoms. That's one of the reasons why alcoholics, they advertise with monsters and alcohol advertisements, because they're trying to remind the individual that if they do get off the alcohol, that they'll have to go through withdrawals. Only a few hours of smoking leads to neural adaptation to the toxicity of the nicotine. If anybody's ever smoked, if you remember the first time you smoked a cigarette, you probably got a little bit sick, but then you did it the second time and you were okay. You didn't get sick the second time. When I was in basic training, we weren't allowed to smoke. We weren't allowed to smoke for about 3 weeks. And some of these guys were fairly regular smokers. So they were going through nicotine withdrawals the first couple of days. They were just pains in the butt. But after 3 weeks, they were okay. They finally let those guys light up. The first cigarette that they smoked, 2 of them threw up, and 1 of them passed out. I mean, it's the craziest thing in the world. So here these guys had been off cigarettes for 3 or 4 weeks, and the first time they lit up, they got sick. But that didn't stop them from lighting up the second time. As a matter of fact, one of the guys that threw up
threw up on his cigarette, and then he almost immediately lit up another cigarette. As stupid as that sounds. Ugh.
Unlike other drugs, nicotine does not continue to build up a tolerance, but the smoker finds a level of comfort that they attempt to maintain. And this is one of the reasons why if somebody has, they're addicted to nicotine, a lot of times they'll just hold their cigarette and they'll just take a couple puffs. What they're doing is they're trying to maintain a level in their system of nicotine. Withdrawal from nicotine causes headaches, nervousness, fatigue, hunger, severe irritability, poor concentration, depression, increased appetite, sleep disturbances, and intense nicotine cravings. Nobody ever dies from getting off of cigarettes. They die from trying to get off of alcohol, but not from tobacco. The individual has experienced a true physiological dependence as the individual has created an excess number of nicotinic acetylcholine receptors that are screaming to be occupied. Without the nicotine to occupy these sites, the result is irritability and discontent. The smoker needs the tobacco to feel normal. Of course, remember, the human body tries to balance itself all the time. And now, of course, it has been tilted in one direction, and it is, in order for it to feel normal, it needs the tobacco to feel that way. Researchers now realize that the feelings of relaxation and well-being that smokers feel when they light up is actually the feeling of having the withdrawal symptoms subdued. So you're going through withdrawals whenever you don't smoke a cigarette. Nicotine addiction is more powerful, is a more powerful addiction than any other addiction. Nicotine. And this is one of the reasons why when people try to get off of tobacco, they are only successful about 10% of the time. This is why they've come up with all of these crazy drugs. Chantix. Chantix is a really powerful drug. It's terrible. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad stuff. It'll give you really bad dreams. Yeah, it's almost a hallucinogen. It's really, really powerful.
I took Chantix to stop smoking because I smoked for a long time, and I started January 1st and I started taking it, and it was like 3 milligrams a day for the first week, and you can smoke and everything. And I was okay and everything, and then the second week it went up 5 milligrams, or to 5 milligrams. Then the third week, it said you had to take 2 pills, and that's when I quit. That's when I quit taking the pills.
Chantix?
Yeah, but I did quit smoking. I haven't smoked yet or anything, and like if I'm around it, I throw up, you know. And
If you're around tobacco?
yeah, if I'm around tobacco, I throw up, and so I don't know what Chantix has done to me, but I did feel a little suicidal. I felt I was getting the crazy dreams, and yeah, I had to quit those pills. They're crazy.
Yeah, they're crazy pills.
Yeah.
They make you crazy. That's weird. You felt suicidal. I'm sorry. And it was from the medication. It wasn't.
Yeah,
It wasn't from the
yeah,
withdrawals of the
yeah.
tobacco.
It was from the medication,
Exactly.
and I felt like maybe the nicotine gave me a chemical imbalance, you know, and then maybe the Chantix, some of it was starting to help me with the chemical imbalance. But in reality, I think it was playing tricks on me, and but I'm glad I noticed the signs. You know, I kept telling my husband, if I seem like I'm getting this way or something, tell me.
Punch me.
Take my pills already.
Are you okay now? You're not smoking and you're not taking Chantix?
I'm not smoking, but I will take the Chantix because it's in my desk. You know, I only have 30 days supply. I will take one if I feel like a craving because they come around and it just like really get me strong. So I'll take one, but it'll last. It'll like, it seems like I'll be okay for like a week or two. You know, and maybe it's just kind of like a bondage or something.
Well, as long as you stop smoking, that's really good. Chantix is it's almost hallucinogen, as I said. It's an anti-anxiety drug. It's also an antidepressant.
Which is the reason why you felt suicidal, is because it's an antidepressant. And antidepressants sometimes have that side effect. What a great side effect for not being depressed. I'm glad you're off of cigarettes.
While 23 million people have tried cocaine, only 600,000 people are weekly users and rare few are daily users. You really can't use cocaine every day. 72 million people have tried marijuana, but only 6.8 million use it on a weekly basis, and only a fraction on a daily basis. 198 million people have tried alcohol, but only 48 million use it weekly, and only 20 million on a daily basis. 162 million people have tried tobacco, 60 million people smoke weekly, and 37 people smoke daily. So as you can see, with all of these addictive substances, the one that is the hardest to stay away from is tobacco. And it's not because it's legal. Alcohol is legal as well. Marijuana is legal in several states, but tobacco is the one that people have the hardest time staying away from. Nearly 1/4 of the people who try tobacco continue to use the drug daily, as compared to fractions with other drugs and 10% of the people using alcohol. So as you can see, tobacco is a terribly addictive substance. 80% of smokers say that they want to quit. 10% want to limit the amount that they smoke. Only 10% of smokers want to continue, yet 100% do continue to smoke or chew. They can't stop because they have the nicotine craving. Other countries have more serious problems with tobacco than the United States. China use is 50% higher than it is in the United States. England uses 40% more tobacco than we do in the United States. Japan uses 50% more than we do in the United States. In the United States it causes lung cancer. In Japan it causes stomach cancer, because when they smoke their cigarettes, instead of drawing it down into their lungs, they swallow it and it goes down into their stomachs. And then they burp it out, as strange as that may seem. But they suffer from stomach cancer rather than lung cancer like we do in the United States. Globally, 12% of women and 47% of men smoke. There may be a predilection for the use of tobacco. The DRD2A1 allele is seen as the culprit in tobacco usage as well.
How am I doing on time? Okay. So what time is it actually?
10, 11.
11, okay, so I'm 4 minutes off. My Fitbit's 4 minutes off. I don't know why it's
You probably need to update it.
4 minutes? Why would it be 4 minutes?
Kind of like my Fitbit, you have to update it through the internet.
Well, they keep trying to sell me new Fitbits. They want me to buy one of those with the pink band.
Don't match.
That's my face. A teen who smokes is 3 times more likely to abuse alcohol. They're 8 times more likely to abuse marijuana, 22 times more likely to abuse cocaine. Only 8% of black teens use tobacco, 15.7% of Hispanic teens use tobacco, 25.7% of white teens use tobacco. This is a white problem. And as you can see, it's not a problem in the African American community. It's not really a problem in the Hispanic community. It's a problem with white people. Maybe we have that DRD2A1 allele or something. Nicotine contains 4,000 to 48,000 chemicals. 400 of these are toxins, not just the tar, but there's 400 different substances in tobacco that causes cancer. 69 are known cancer-causing substances. Worldwide, it is estimated that smoking causes 5 million premature deaths per year. 5 million. 392,000 people, 392,000 of these people are in the United States, 264,000 men, and 178,000 women. Men smoke a lot more than women do. Lung cancer is the leading problem. When I've always read obituaries. There's something wrong with me. I've always read obituaries. If somebody was a smoker, they died in their 50s.
For this reason, when I was born, my life expectancy was about 56, the age of 56. My life expectancy when I was born in 1949 was 56. But the reason was because so many people smoked. After World War II, a lot of men came back from Europe and the Pacific. A lot of military men smoked cigarettes. Because over half the population were smokers. And for that reason, these guys were dying relatively young. They were dying in their 50s and 60s. Heart disease, of course, is another problem. If you don't die from cancer, then you get to die from heart disease. Other lung diseases like emphysema would kill people in their 50s and 60s. So if you read obituaries from the 1950s or 1960s, you saw a lot of people dying from emphysema and lung cancer. Now they don't even tell you why somebody died. But in the old days, they used to put that in the obituaries, as much fun as that was. And I was always trying to figure out how long I was going to live. I don't know why that was so important to me, but I would read the obituaries going, yes, my mom's older than me, so I'm going to make it one more year. You know, that kind of stuff. As strange as that seems. I just wanted to know how long I was going to live. I figured I'm going to live into my 90s by this time. I'm 70 right now. I got 20 good more years. I hope they're good years. Find out when I go home. An additional 50,000 people die from secondhand smoke. 8.6 million Americans have at least one serious illness caused by smoking. It is estimated that smokers lose 10 years off their life when they smoke. This is a study, a longitudinal study that they did in England with people that smoked and people that didn't smoke. And what they discovered was that you lost about 10 years off your life from smoking. No offense, Andrea. I apologize. It's not my fault. I didn't have anything to do with you starting to smoke. Smoking accelerates the process of atherosclerosis by increasing low-density fats, increasing blood coagulability, triggering cardiac arrhythmias, reducing microrespiratory function by introducing carbon monoxide into the bloodstream. Carbon monoxide has a 230-time stronger affinity for hemoglobin than oxygen does. So if you smoke cigarettes, the smoke from it's the paper that causes the carbon monoxide. If you smoke cigarettes, you've got far less hemoglobin in your body that is going to transport oxygen. And this is the reason that when people smoke, they can't run very far or run for very long. It reduces your stamina. 1/3 of all smoker deaths are due to cardiovascular disease. 35,000 of these are from secondhand smoke, and this is a huge tragedy. Bronchopulmonary diseases are far more prevalent among smokers than non-smokers. Emphysema, chronic bronchitis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, that they talk about all the time. So if you see those guys on television, they're going, oh, I have CPD, and I take this drug. Well, the reason that they have COPD is probably because they were smokers. And of course, I really don't feel sorry for anybody when they die from doing something that they did to themselves. Oh, I jumped off of a tall building and I killed myself. I don't feel sorry for them, I'm sorry. But then again, I worked in the emergency room for a long time. Children who live with smokers suffer from more asthma, more colds, and more bronchitis. 80 to 90% of COPD deaths are due to smoking, 80 to 90%. So that guy on television, if he really does have COPD, it's probably because he was a smoker. How am I doing on time?
17.
Okay. Men who smoke are 22 times more likely to develop lung cancer than men who don't smoke. Women who smoke are 12 times more likely to develop lung cancer than women who don't. 85% of men and 75% of women with lung cancer are smokers. Equality, women comprised only 26% of lung cancer deaths in 1979. In 2002, that increased to 42.8% of the deaths. The black lung cough, and of course, oh, that's just a joke, sorry. It's not great. Anyway.
It has to do with the glass ceiling, it's a joke. About 50% of mothers smoke. There are more women dying of lung cancer now because they're smoking more, and so that's a problem. About 15% of mothers smoke during pregnancy. Nicotine and the byproduct carbon monoxide change some of the positive properties in the blood. Carbon monoxide blocks oxygen transport, of course, and they're not only blocking oxygen transport to themselves, but they're also blocking oxygen transport to their babies. Nicotine makes platelets more sticky, increasing the possibility of clot forming, and this is a really serious problem when you're pregnant because you have constricted areas in your body that potentially you could develop a clot in. Babies born to smokers have lower birth weights, which is tragic because she did that to that baby. They have a higher incidence of sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS. Women who smoke during pregnancy are twice as likely to miscarry and have spontaneous abortions as non-smokers. Children whose mothers smoke during pregnancy have a 4 times greater chance of having ADHD. Is it real ADHD though? In this case it is. This is the real stuff. They also have a greater probability of having conduct disorder, drug dependence, asthma, chronic bronchitis, and chronic respiratory symptoms. When we give birth to children, and actually this is just my idea, when we have children, we want them to be the best that they can possibly be, hopefully. But if you're a smoker, then you're reducing the probability that this kid is going to be a strong and healthy child, as sad as that is. Why don't we stop right here? We'll pick this up next time. I'll get off my preaching box and I'll stop preaching.